Imagine a world where a person's value was measured only by their strength, a world where soldiers were not just tools of power, but the very embodiment of that power. Their weapons were as sharp as blades, but their souls were forged like cold steel. And their loyalty? It didn't belong to their family or their nation, but to one man alone, the Sultan. They were torn from their homes, stolen from their parents, transformed into perfect killing machines. They were taught to forget their past, to forget the cries of their mothers and the grief of their fathers. Their creed was simple. Life is service. Death is victory. Today, we look at the most feared elite unit in history. Soldiers who were destined for dominance, yet whose lives were a tragic story of sacrifice and betrayal. These are the Janissaries, and this is their story. It all began with a system known as devshirme, or literally, the child gathering. Starting in the 14th century, Ottoman Sultans dispatched their officials deep into the Balkans. However, after the bloody Battle of Mohacs, the shadow also stretched over the territory of present-day Slovakia. From the southern regions of what was then Hungary, thousands of boys were dragged away as spoils of war to serve an empire that was ravaging their homeland. To many, it was pure cruelty. Families were forced to surrender their sons as a form of tax, a blood tax. While Islamic law forbade the enslavement of Muslims, the Christian subjects of the empire had no such protection. However, there were paradoxes. In some extremely impoverished regions, parents would voluntarily offer their children, hoping they would find education and power in Istanbul that they could never achieve at home. But for most, the villages were filled with tears. Mothers tore their hair in grief, and fathers tried to hide their sons in the forests or marry them off early to save them from a fate from which there was no return. When the boys arrived in Istanbul, their old lives ceased to exist forever. The first step was the violent loss of identity. They were given new names and forced to convert to Islam. For a child raised in the Christian faith with their parents, this was an unimaginable psychological shock. They were cut off from their language, their traditions, and the God they had prayed to since infancy. Their mental state was a mixture of trauma and profound loneliness. To survive, they had to build a new loyalty. The Sultan became their father, and the army their only family. This process of systematic brainwashing created soldiers who were internally broken, yet externally perfectly disciplined. Many suffered from deep homesickness, but it was gradually replaced by a sense of elitism. They were led to believe they were the chosen ones, and this new identity was the only thing they had left in a foreign world. They were men with the bodies of warriors, but with souls forever scarred by a stolen childhood. Training a Janissary was not just about combat. It was a total reconstruction of a human being. The initial years were spent working on farms within Anatolian families to harden their bodies and master the Turkish language. Upon returning to Istanbul, they entered barracks that became their entire world. The regimen was both monastic and Spartan. For many years, Janissaries were forbidden to marry, forbidden to own property, and their only family was their regiment, the Orti. The training was brutal and uncompromising. Archery, wrestling, and later the masterful use of firearms were daily requirements. Discipline was maintained through physical punishment. common even for the slightest hesitation. It is estimated that a significant portion of the boys did not survive this harsh process, succumbing to exhaustion, disease, or training injuries. Those who remained, however, were not just soldiers. They were fanatically devoted warriors who knew no fear of death, as their faith and drill taught them that falling in the Sultan's name was the highest honor. The Janissaries were not just brute force. They were the technological peak of their time. Their most iconic weapon was the kilij, a curved Ottoman saber designed for deep slashing wounds, and a long knife called the yatagan. The yatagan had a unique forward-curving blade, making it a lethal weapon in close-quarters combat. However, what made the Janissaries truly revolutionary was their transition to firearms. While European knights still relied on armor and swords, the Janissaries became masters of the musket and early hand cannons. They were capable of firing in coordinated volleys, creating pure terror on the battlefield. Additionally, they used composite bows with extreme range and various types of axes and maces. Their equipment was completed by the iconic high white hat called the burq, which featured a long sleeve of fabric at the back, symbolizing the sleeve of their spiritual patron and protecting the neck from both the sun and saber strikes. The Janissaries were not ordinary soldiers. They were the first true professionals in Europe. While European kings hastily summoned peasants during wartime, the Janissaries were on standby 365 days a year. On the battlefield, they formed the unyielding center of the Ottoman line, with the sole mission of protecting the Sultan. Their discipline was absolute. They could stand motionless under enemy fire, waiting for the precise command to release a devastating musket volley. They are often compared to gladiators, but there is a fundamental difference. Gladiators fought for the entertainment of a crowd, while Janissaries were a state-trained machine designed for continental conquest. Instead, they are more like Roman legionaries in their organization and Spartans in their fanatical drill. They were more elite than regular Turkish units. While the cavalry relied on speed, the Janissaries were the solid rock upon which European chivalry was shattered. The Janissaries' most sacred symbol was not the sword, but the kazan, a massive copper cooking cauldron. This cauldron represented their brotherhood and their bond to the Sultan, who provided for them. If the Janissaries overturned their cauldron in the middle of a camp, it was a clear signal: rebellion. The darkest chapter of their history unfolded in 1622. The young Sultan Osman II attempted to limit their influence, but the Janissaries reacted with extreme brutality. They stormed the palace, captured the Sultan, and dragged him through the streets of Istanbul to the Yedikule fortress. There, the Janissaries brutally murdered him. It was the first time that this elite unit, created to protect the monarch, spilled the blood of its own master. They proved to the world that they were no longer just servants, but the true and ruthless rulers of the empire. The glory of the Janissaries did not last forever. Over the centuries, the elite warriors transformed into a corrupt political caste. They began to marry, engage in trade, and chose political intrigue over military training. They fiercely opposed any modernization of the army, fearing the loss of their privileges. Because of them, the Ottoman Empire began to lag behind on the battlefield. The definitive end came in June 1826. Sultan Mahmud II had grown weary of their constant rebellions and had secretly built a new, modern army. When the Janissaries in Istanbul once again overturned their cauldrons in defiance, the Sultan did not hesitate. He surrounded their barracks and ordered his artillery to fire until only burning ruins remained. Thousands of Janissaries perished in the flames or were executed. This event went down in history as the auspicious incident, as it finally freed the Sultan's hands. The Janissaries, who had once built the empire, were ultimately and brutally erased from existence by it. The story of the Janissaries is a testament to the power of human will, but also to the dark side of power. From slaves, they became masters. From children, they became killing machines. Their legacy lives on in history as a reminder that even the most elite warriors can fall when their strength turns against them. If this story fascinated you, and you want to discover more legendary moments from the past, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell so you don't miss anything. Stay legendary.